Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to part one of the BTCS AMA webinar series. My name is Walter Pinto, a Managing Director at KCSA Strategic Communications, and I'm very happy to be joined today by Charles Allen, CEO of BTCS. Today is part one of a new webinar series for shareholders and prospective investors to have greater access to the BTCS management team. There's currently a lot of market volatility, not just in crypto. It's important for us to be transparent and engage with our supporters to talk specifically about the company, the industry as a whole, and any other topics that you all are curious about. For this session, and you all voted, which we're really grateful for, today we'll be discussing capital strategy and ETH deployment, specifically how BTCS combines traditional capital markets tools with DeFi-based financing to support scalable growth while protecting shareholders' interest. We also had important news in the industry this morning, which we'll talk about here a little bit more shortly. Before we jump into questions for Charles, let me remind everyone that statements made today may be considered forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995 and applicable securities laws. Actual results may differ materially from those expressed or implied due to risks and uncertainties described in the company's filings with the SEC, including its periodic reports and investor materials. BTCS undertakes no obligation to update forward-looking statements except as required by law. We received several questions already from our audience. If for some reason you want to submit more questions, there is a Q&A function in the Zoom today. If we don't get to your question during today's session, please email us always at btcs@kcsa.com. Please note this call is being recorded today, Wednesday, March 4th, 2026 at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. A replay will be available on BTCS's Investor Relations website following the conclusion of today's discussion. With that, let me welcome Charles Allen for opening remarks. Charles, I really appreciate you joining us today. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Walter, and thanks to everyone for taking the time to listen in. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that the recent volatility in the digital asset markets, as well as more broadly across the global financial markets. There's just a lot going on in the world right now, and ongoing macroeconomic uncertainty and speculation about the future has obviously put a lot of pressure on various asset classes. While instability is not new to this industry, and it's something we've frankly been accustomed to over the last decade as we've operated within the industry, it can definitely challenge short-term sentiment and is not necessarily representative of like the long term. So as we look at volatility, it doesn't really alter the fundamentals. And when I look at Ethereum today, I remain highly confident in the strength and durability of its underlying foundation. It's really more than a tradable asset. It's the core infrastructure powering DeFi, tokenization, stablecoins, and really an expanding ecosystem of on-chain innovation and activity. Network usage, developer activity, institutional participation, and really the continued growth reinforce our view that Ethereum remains one of the most strategically important blockchain networks in the world. So super excited about the time despite what's going on. And again, our strategy at BTCS is grounded in that long-term thesis. We're not managing the business around short-term price movements. Rather, we're focused on building an operating business with strong revenue generation around infrastructure designed for sustainable value creation for our shareholders. Anyway, that's why I'm so optimistic about the road ahead for us and for our shareholders for the continued support.
Well said. Thanks, Charles. I appreciate that. And we did receive several questions, as I mentioned before this call. But there was obviously big news this morning. It was purely coincidental that we're having our first AMA on the morning of today's news. But I'd love to get your thoughts, as I'm sure everyone else on today's call would. The Kraken Federal Reserve news broke this morning. We have equities moving higher today on the news. Give us your initial thoughts and impact on the industry.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, this is something that wouldn't have happened, a decade ago, right? For the better part of 10 years, the regulatory blockade has stopped access to, the Fed Reserve. So having Kraken gain this access really is a nod of not only credibility to the crypto industry, but the acceptance and inclusion of our industry in the broader financial system. And I think, we saw that with the Genius Act regulation coming to fruition. We're still waiting on the Clarity Act. I'm optimistic that could be over this summer. We'll see. But I think it's a very good step in the right direction. Obviously, the crypto equities did very well, including BTCS. So it was really just a positive development and kind of opportunistic that happened today. So we're able to touch on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think the market's speaking for itself. I think the news today was obviously very positive. And I guess just getting into our questions that we received, I mean, digging deeper into the BTCS story, I guess investors are always curious how to gain exposure to crypto. You can gain exposure through ETFs. There's obviously several DATs that have gone public. You could buy the coin directly, but you all have a different model and a different approach. How do you compare the BTCS model versus maybe some of the other investment opportunities that investors can are evaluating today in the market?
Well, I think our model is really grounded in the fact that we're an operating business and we want to have growing revenue and focus on solid fundamentals. Our business is not solely we're gonna buy a bunch of crypto and hope it goes up, and if it doesn't, we have no plan. And I think that's probably the biggest differentiating feature to kind of just put it in a nutshell. And that's something we've been focused on for a very long time. Many of the new entrants were former biotech companies or other, zombie, NASDAQ vehicles that kind of pivoted into the space and are now struggling to figure out what to do. I think if your business model is simply buy, pick a token, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, it's not really a good business plan because hedge funds are going to have a great pair trade. If that's all you do, if you traded a premium to your net asset value, they'll short your stock and they'll buy the underlying via an ETF or vice versa. So you really have very limited ability to influence the company based on driving operations. And I think a lot of the teams that pivot into that model over the summer are now looking at, well, what can they do to actually build a business that's going to resonate with the public market? And that's something we've been working on for a very long time. And I'm sure we can talk a little bit more about the various business lines as we move through this.
Yeah, and I think that gets to the heart of your DeFi, TradFi, accretion flywheel that we always talk about. Walk us through kind of capital allocation. You can buy more ETH, you can deploy it into your operations to generate future revenue. How do you think about capital deployment given, the various options that you have within your business model?
Well, we really have three business lines, and to kind of put them simply, we have Node Ops, which is staking, we have Builder Plus, which is block building, and then the new one is Imperium. And so each has a very kind of distinct profile to it. Node Ops is very, very high margin, but it's hard to grow. You need a lot of capital. So I put low growth, high margin. Builder Plus is high growth, but low margin. And Imperium, which is what we're currently focused on, is high growth, high margin. And so when we think about capital allocation in our kind of accretion flywheel, it's, well, how do we maximize value for shareholders by accessing the capital markets through both traditional finance and on-chain DeFi, as well as how do we deploy those assets in those three models. And I think that how we deploy really depends on what's going on the market, and it's something that's evolving. And so, I know a couple of the other questions that we have, we'll touch on those, but it's really a balance of how can we create the most shareholder value.
Yeah, and to that point, we did have a question just more specifically talking about the combination of DeFi and TradFi finance mechanisms. I think you are one of the few companies that's taking this approach successfully. What does that actually look like in practice, and why do you believe this hybrid approach creates structural advantage for BTCS?
Well, it gives a lot of flexibility. So if as a small cap company, your access to capital is very different than, let's say, if you're MicroStrategy or Microsoft, right? And with that said, so you have access to the public equity markets. You can sell common stock, common with warrants. You have on the debt side, convertible debt, convertible preferred, the typical cap stack that you would look at. To be able to supplement that with DeFi opportunities where we can, integrate with those on chain with our operations adds another mechanism. It's also, lower cost of capital in many respects, a different risk reward profile. But to be able to kind of put those together, in a kind of a traditional sense, to get like the lowest weighted average cost of capital or to fund the business in the most appropriate way, it's nice to have an extra tool. I'm actually surprised um, other public companies aren't looking at that as well. I mean, it does come with some, accounting nightmare and monitoring that is not, um, easy to get into if you've never done it before, but it's definitely a tool that we find very useful.
Yeah, I can imagine without the experience of doing so, the complexity to that. But it sounds like in doing so, the added optionality or flexibility is an advantage for you all compared to others, perhaps, right?
Without a doubt, especially on the debt side. I mean, if you look at the terms that most companies get, I mean, I've seen, peers of ours refinance and then refinance and refinance their convertible note positions or pay them off with huge penalties because they have complex terms in them. It gives us the ability to better negotiate terms. We actually have great terms on our convert, but having an alternative um, debt capital access that others aren't using is amazing, right? It gives, if you can borrow at 6% and earn it substantially beyond that's an amazing, that's an amazing situation.
Yeah, I agree. And just we've had a couple questions about capital allocation and where is the best use of capital for shareholders. And so we could buy more ETH. You can always sell equity to buy more ETH or deploy into operations. You could buy back shares. There's a lot of different ways that you can return value to shareholders. How do you all think about internally, all of those scenarios? And obviously, you being a big shareholder, how do you think about the best use of capital, just given what's going on in the market today?
Well, I mean, first as a larger shareholder, I mean, my goal is to maximize the value of my equity, which I think is aligned with every other shareholder. With respect to how we do that, it definitely is dynamic, right? The markets move. You have to pivot and make adjustments when necessary, both to manage risk as well as to optimize. And I think something that we've been working on, and we'll talk about this, I think, a little bit later, is where we deploy capital. We, historically back in, I guess, starting in 2021, it was just staking, right? Then we moved to block building. Now we've moved to Imperium. So as we get deeper into these new initiatives and see the returns that we're able to generate, we're going to reallocate capital to maximize shareholder value. And I think that's where, we look at the tools of how do we access it. As you said, we have the ATM, we have convertible debt, we have now on-chain, and we can think about where we want to deploy that. Do we want to buy ETH? Do we want to buy back shares? If what we're working on right now, despite the fact our stock is down, we don't think it's in the best interest to buy back shares because we think we can generate substantially better returns than returning that capital to shareholders via either a buyback or even a dividend. And that's something that's evolved more recently, and you'll in the coming reports, we'll be able to share more detail on that.
Yeah, and speaking of, we did receive a question from our audience. When are we going to, I can obviously answer this, but when are we going to be reporting our next financial results?
So our annual report, we should file on a Form 10-K is due, I believe it's the end of March. We're gonna I don't anticipate getting that done too soon before the deadline. If we're lucky, maybe a week. We have, complex financials in the crypto space, so it takes time for our auditors to get through that and put that together. So I would say, close to the end of the month is when you should expect financials to come out. We have, put out, unaudited revenue of, at least 16 million. So that's a huge jump from where we were in 2024 of 4 million. And that's, so that's out there as far as, the rest of the details we'll see. I mean, obviously the price of crypto has come down substantially. Now it's kind of coming back up. And I think, what I'm most excited about is what 2026 holds for us.
Yeah, and speaking of, we do have some questions about the outlook for 2026. is your investment in Builder Plus? Is it Imperium? Is it both? We actually have a question. Would you consider buying another DAT that's trading significantly below NAV? I don't think we would, but it's an investor question. So how do we, like, what are the things to look forward to in 26? How are we investing and growing? And obviously, hopefully the market continues to have good news like today.
So I think 2026 is going to be the year where we really focus on Imperium. That is, as I said before, we think it could have the potential growth that we got from Builder Plus at a substantially higher margin. And I can't really say too much beyond that. We started to lean, Imperium has a couple components. One, the capital we post on Aave is technically part of Imperium, but that's a low yield compared to a lot of the other strategies we're looking at. And we're looking at how we can get extremely sophisticated in the strategies we're deploying on. A lot of that, I think we're probably there on the technical aspects, but we need to figure out some of the accounting. Um, but it's to me that's really what 2026 is going to be about is can we drive substantial revenue and start to move towards profitability at a rapid pace. And I think that that's going to be something that we can, hopefully prove out. Obviously, I can provide no assurances or guarantees that we'll be successful in that endeavor. But at the beginning of 2025, we kind of set out, said, hey, we had very ambitious revenue goals. In 2026, we're going to shift those goals to be more focused on, in addition to revenue, gross profit. And so I think that's what we're really looking at for 2026. And I think this, even with the decline in the market, it's really helped us to, refocus on that. And I think it'll make us a stronger company for it.
Well said. Appreciate that, Charles. And those are all the questions that we received. If anybody else has any other questions, please put it into the Q&A function. And as we're giving our audience a minute here, this is the first of a series of AMAs that we're going to have with specific topics. We'll be putting out another poll on some other topics that we think are interesting for you all to vote on. We've had an amazing audience. Charles, it doesn't seem like we have any other questions. Any final thoughts before we conclude today's AMA?
I mean, I guess I didn't address the question of acquiring other DATs, and that's
Yeah.
I might as well we'll touch on that if we have a minute. I mean, it's something that I get asked a lot. It's very challenging when I look at most of the other DATs to do a deal. And the reason I say that is if for us to want to buy another company, if their only asset is a highly liquid token that I could otherwise go buy in the market, now I'm going through a complex M&A process, which is going to require shareholder votes, legal fees, accounting, integration, I mean, just all this. We're talking millions of dollars to buy something that I could just go buy off an OTC market. So for that, what do I need? I need a big discount, right? I need a big discount. Now, if they're already trading at a discount, I need a discount on that. And so it becomes really hard. And then if you have to look at it from the other side, that's me as the purchaser. If you're a seller, why would you ever sell your business at less than liquidation value? You should get sued by shareholders. You should just give it back to your shareholders. So you end up with this weird scenario of, well, there's not really a deal that could be had unless there's an operating company that's synergistic, or, and I've seen some bankers try to slice and dice this. Well, let me slap a warrant on it and do some other funky capital market structuring to try to make it a discount here, but if the price goes up, it's a premium. And to me, it's all just a distraction. What we're seeing so far in Imperium today is amazing. Why would I want to distract myself with an M&A deal that's just going to buy a token that I could otherwise buy? Like there's got to be a real synergistic value to any acquisition target we would look at, and we do look at everything that comes in the door that's credible. We have a fiduciary duty to do that. With that said, we're not going to go do a bad deal just to do a deal. And I don't think there's a lot of opportunity for mergers between like pure play DApps that do nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're in an advantageous position. You don't just hold ETH and it's a waiting game. There's operations and incredible upside for shareholders in many more ways than just owning the crypto.
Yep.
Great. Well, appreciate it, Charles. And I appreciate everybody in our audience today. Again, we're going to have a series of these AMAs. Really appreciate everybody's participation. If you have other questions regarding this topic, please email us at btcs@kcsa.com. And as a reminder, we're going to be posting the replay of this AMA on our investor relations website. Please look at our social. Please follow us on social, and we'll be putting out another poll for the next AMA here shortly. Really appreciate it, Charles. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.